Today, we continue our character series on the great figures of Greek mythology with one of the most brilliant and complex characters of Homer's epics, Odysseus, the King of Ithaca. As we explored in our previous videos, Achilles represents divine rage and glory, while Hector represents duty and family. In contrast, Odysseus represents human intellect, cunning, and the relentless willpower to survive. While Achilles won battles, it was Odysseus who actually won the Trojan War. Odysseus was the son of Laertes and Anticlea, and the ruler of the rugged island kingdom of Ithaca. But before he was a king at war, he was a man fiercely dedicated to his wife, Penelope. Interestingly, Odysseus played a massive role in the politics of ancient Greece long before the Trojan War began. According to the ancient scholar Apollodorus in his library, translated by Sir J.G. Fraser, Book 3, countless kings and noblemen in Greece wanted to marry Helen. Her father, Tyndareus, was terrified that choosing one suitor would cause the others to start a war. Odysseus, however, saw an opportunity. Approaching the desperate king, Apollodorus writes, Odysseus promised that, if he would help him to win the hand of Penelope, he would suggest a way by which there would be no quarrel. And when Tyndareus promised to help him, Odysseus told him to exact an oath from all the suitors that they would defend the favored bridegroom against any wrong that might be done him in respect of his marriage. On hearing that, Tyndareus put the suitors on their oath, and while he chose Menelaus to be the bridegroom of Helen, he solicited Icarius to bestow Penelope on Odysseus. In exchange for this advice, which became known as the Oath of Tyndareus, Odysseus secured the hand of Penelope. Tyndareus agreed, the oath was sworn, and Odysseus settled peacefully in Ithaca. Penelope, who is mentioned here, happens to be the cousin of Helen of Troy and the famous wife of Odysseus. However, that very oath would soon come back to haunt him. When the Trojan prince Paris and Helen ran away together to Troy, the Oath of Tyndareus was invoked. All Greek leaders were summoned to sail for Troy. Odysseus, who had just welcomed his infant son Telemachus, had absolutely no desire to leave his family to fight someone else's war. According to the epitome of Pseudo-Apollodorus, 3.7, translated by J.G. Fraser, Odysseus attempted to dodge the draft by feigning utter madness, but a Greek commander named Palamedes saw right through the act. The text details the brutal confrontation. But he, not wishing to go to the war, feigned madness. However, Palamedes, son of Nauplius, proved his madness to be fictitious, and when Odysseus pretended to rave, Palamedes followed him, and, snatching Telemachus from Penelope's bosom, drew his sword as if he would kill him. And in his fear for the child, Odysseus confessed that his madness was pretended, and he went to the war. Forced to save his son, his sanity was proven, his bluff was called, and Odysseus was forced to leave for a war that would consume 20 years of his life. Despite his initial reluctance, Odysseus quickly proved himself indispensable. In fact, even though a different version was used in Homer's Iliad, according to some other sources, without Odysseus, the Greeks never would have had their greatest warrior, Achilles. According to the library of Pseudo-Apollodorus, Book 3, Chapter 13, Section 8, a prophecy foretold that Troy could not be taken without Achilles. However, Achilles' mother, the goddess Thetis, knew her son would die if he went to Troy. To protect him, she hid him on the island of Skyros, disguising the teenage demigod as a girl among the daughters of King Lycomedes. The Greeks sent their most cunning mind to find him. As detailed by the Roman poet Statius in his Achilleid, translated by J.H. Moseley, Book 1, Odysseus arrived disguised as a merchant, laying out feminine gifts alongside a finely forged sword and shield. When Odysseus ordered his men to sound a sudden war trumpet outside the palace, the disguise fell apart. Odysseus gives the word to Aegeates, loudly rings out the blast of the bronze trumpet. He lays his hand upon the shield and spear. The garments fall from his breast. Achilles instinctively prepared for battle. The trick was a success, and Odysseus had secured the ultimate weapon for the Greek army. Yet Odysseus never forgot the man who tore him away from his wife and child. Odysseus harbored a deep, burning resentment for Palamedes, and his vengeance was as cold as it was calculated. Odysseus wasn't a man who fought with pure brute strength. He fought with his mind. According to Apollodorus's Epitome, translated by Sir J.G. Fraser, Book 3, Odysseus devised a complex and deadly frame-up. But Odysseus forced a Phrygian prisoner to write a letter of treason in the name of Priam to Palamedes, and having buried gold in the tent of Palamedes, he dropped the letter in the camp. Agamemnon read the letter, found the gold, and delivered up Palamedes to the allies to be stoned as a traitor. Odysseus had exacted his revenge perfectly, removing the man who had ruined his peaceful life without ever drawing his own sword. Odysseus's unmatched intellect eventually brought the 10-year siege of Troy to a decisive end. After the deaths of Achilles and Hector, the war ground to a bloody stalemate. The walls of Troy were simply too massive to breach by force. It was Odysseus who conceived the ultimate deception. As sung by the bard Demodocus in Book 8 of Homer's Odyssey, A.T. Murray's translation. And he sang how the sons of the Achaeans poured forth from the horse, and, leaving their hollow ambush, sacked the city. Of the others he sang how in divers ways they wasted the lofty city, but of Odysseus, how he went like Ares to the house of Deiphobus, together with godlike Menelaus. There it was, he said, that Odysseus braved the most terrible fight, and in the end conquered by the aid of great-hearted Athena. Also in different sources like the Aeneid, the Trojan horse was mentioned as a device so typical of Odysseus's standard guile that the Trojans should have recognized it. By hiding inside the belly of a massive wooden horse, Odysseus and his men slipped past the impregnable walls, slaughtered the guards, and opened the gates for the returning Greek fleet. The city of Troy burned, and the war was finally won. But for Odysseus, the end of the Trojan War was just the beginning of his nightmare. Homer's Odyssey chronicles his harrowing 10-year journey home, a brutal sequence of consecutive disasters. After leaving Troy, Odysseus and his men first raid the city of the Cicones, before narrowly escaping the lethargic trap of the Lotus Eaters. Next, they land on the island of the Cyclops. For his arrogance in blinding the Cyclops Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea curses Odysseus. The curse immediately takes effect. Though Odysseus receives the magical bag of winds from Aeolus to guide him home, his greedy crew opens it while he sleeps, blowing them entirely off course. They are then decimated by the cannibalistic giants, the Laestrygonians, leaving Odysseus with only a single ship. He then outsmarts the witch goddess Circe, who turns his men into swine, and journeys deep into the underworld itself to consult the dead prophet Tiresias. Surviving the realm of the dead, Odysseus binds himself to the mast of his ship to survive the deadly song of the sirens, before navigating the terrifying straits guarded by the six-headed monster Scylla and the ship-devouring whirlpool Charybdis. Disaster strikes finally and fatally when his starving crew slaughters the sacred cattle of the sun god, Helios. In retribution, Zeus destroys his last ship with a thunderbolt. Washing ashore on the island of Ogygia, Odysseus is held captive by the nymph Calypso for 7 long years. Only when the gods finally intervene does he sail to the island of the Phaeacians, who at last grant him safe passage home. Through sheer grit, intellect, and the loss of every single man under his command, Odysseus survives. Finally, 20 years after he left, Odysseus washes ashore on his beloved Ithaca, but his kingdom has been hijacked. Over 100 arrogant suitors have occupied his palace, consuming his wealth and demanding that Queen Penelope choose one of them as her new husband. Guided by Athena, Odysseus disguises himself as an old, scarred beggar to infiltrate his own home. In Book 19 of the Odyssey, A.T. Murray's translation, he is bathed by Euryclea, his elderly wet nurse who had cared for him since he was an infant. As she washes his legs, She feels a very specific hunting scar on his thigh.
Verily thou art Odysseus, dear child, and I knew thee not, till I had handled all the body of my lord.
Swearing her to secrecy, Odysseus waits for the perfect moment. That moment comes during Penelope's archery contest. The suitors fail to even string Odysseus's great bow. The disguised beggar steps up, strings it effortlessly, and shoots an arrow straight through 12 axe heads. Then, the illusion drops. In Book 22, Odysseus leaps to the threshold, declaring,
"Ye dogs, ye thought that I should never more come home from the land of the Trojans, seeing that ye wasted my house, and lay with the maidservants by force, and while yet I lived, covertly wooed my wife, having no fear of the gods, who hold broad heaven, nor of the indignation of men, that is to be hereafter. Now over you one and all have the cords of destruction been made fast."
The very first to fall is Antinous, the most brutal and arrogant of the suitors. Just as Antinous raises a golden goblet to drink, Odysseus unleashes his wrath. As Homer describes in Book 22, a T. Murray translation, "He smote him with an arrow in the throat, and the point passed clean out through his tender neck, and he fell on one side." In a brutal slaughter, Odysseus, his son Telemachus, and his loyal servants trap the rest of the suitors in the hall and kill every last one of them. The epic concludes not with a battle, but with a battle of wits. Even after the slaughter, Penelope remains cautious. To ensure this man is not an impostor or a god in disguise, she decides to test him. In Book 23, a T. Murray translation, Penelope orders her nurse to move their marriage bed.
"Come, Euryclea, make strew for him the stout bedstead outside the well-built bridal chamber."
This was a brilliant trap. Odysseus had built the bedchamber himself around a living olive tree, carving the bedpost directly from its rooted trunk. It was physically impossible to move without destroying it. Enraged, Odysseus falls for the trick and blurts out the secret of its construction.
"Who has set my bed elsewhere? Hard would it be for one, even though he were very skilled. I built it myself, and no other."
Hearing the secret that only the two of them knew, Penelope finally embraces him. This famous test shows that Penelope was no less cunning than Odysseus himself. She matched his legendary intellect at every turn, proving exactly why, all those years ago, Odysseus had chosen the brilliant Penelope over the beautiful Helen of Troy. They were an equal match in mind and spirit. Odysseus survived gods, monsters, and a legendary war by relying on his greatest weapon, his mind. So, I pass the question to you. Who is your favorite figure of the Trojan War? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history and mythology.